Today's video is sponsored by Megalopolis Toys. Megalopolis Toys has an amazing selection for all of your toy collecting needs. And check out their Mega Rewards loyalty program, where you can earn points to accumulate store credit and get special rewards. And hey, if you're shopping for some of those high-end collectibles like the Mondo He-Man that I'm going to talk about in today's video, there's payment plans available. And don't forget about their signature white glove shipping. They use custom shipping boxes, special packaging to make sure that your item arrives perfectly safe and sound. Just look at the way that this Mondo He-Man was packaged and delivered to me. It is unbeatable and unmatched. So check out Megalopolis Toys, and a very special thanks to them for sponsoring today's video. Follow the link in the video description below. Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Masters of the Universe 1/6 scale He-Man action figure from Mondo. That is right, my friends. These have been coming for such a long time, it feels like, but they are finally shipping, and He-Man is the first of a whole new line of 1/6 scale high-end collectible figures from the folks over at Mondo. So let's dive right in and check him out. As you can see, the figure comes in really nice fully enclosed box packaging. The slipcover there resembles Castle Grayskull, and when you remove that slipcover, we have a nice black box there that's got a great kind of image there of He-Man on the front. When you flip that around to the back, you've got even cooler artwork. I actually really love this artwork of He-Man on the back. I love the colors on it. Very colorful, really cool looking artwork. Also, the box is real sturdy. It feels like a nice quality made box. It's got a magnetic flap on there, so when you open that front flap up, it reveals a window box within that fully showcases that figure within. Of course, you can then remove the figure by sliding out the inner tray there. That way, if you want to store the extra parts and accessories inside, this is a really nice box, and I imagine a lot of collectors are going to keep this packaging to store some of these extra parts and such for this particular figure. But let's go ahead and get him pulled out of that box and get a closer look at him. So I want to start things off by saying that I personally am not really a 1/6 scale high-end action figure collector. I really don't have many figures of this style and scale in my collection. However, I am a huge Masters of the Universe fan and collector. So I just wanted to throw that out there because some of you that are watching this might be high-end 1/6 scale collectors, and you might be looking at this a little different than me. So I'm coming at this as a He-Man fan who's fairly new to this particular scale and style. So let me go ahead and start with the tape measure here, and I'm going to bring that in to show you that since he's in the 1/6 scale, that puts him right at 12 inches tall, exactly what we would expect. And I will tell you right out the box here, I'm really impressed with the overall feel and quality of this guy. First of all, he's got really, really nice weight to him, and he just feels like a nice, solid, sturdy action figure. The plastic on here is really nice. I mean, this guy just feels solid. He feels like a really quality-made figure, so I was really impressed with that right out of the box. And as you can see, he's standing nice and sturdy there, so the articulation feels nice and tight on there, and we'll talk about that more as we're going over all of the articulated parts. Now, you might be looking at this and noticing right off the bat that this is sort of a new interpretation of the character. This isn't based on any specific design of He-Man, but rather what Mondo's doing is kind of making their own designs for the characters here. And I'll be honest, like with He-Man here, I felt a little nitpicky all the way from when they first revealed it. Mostly because I feel like He-Man is always one of those characters that's a bit hard to feel right, and I don't know what that is, but I'm specifically talking about the head sculpt here. All in all, I feel like this is a really good sculpt. It's got a great paint deco there. I think the shading looks really nice. The skin tone's good. He's got nice bright blue eyes. He's got kind of the sandy blonde hair, which has got some nice shading in there. So it all looks really good as far as that sculpt goes. I just don't know if I love this head because I don't know, it's one of those things where I look at it and he doesn't necessarily look or feel like He-Man to me, and I don't know if I can quite explain it. And maybe you don't feel that way, and that is totally fine, because I do think that it's a beautifully sculpted head. It's just always hard for me to see different interpretations of He-Man. Like, sometimes it feels like He-Man and sometimes it doesn't, and I'm not sure yet. I will say it's growing on me. The more I've had this in hand, the more I've definitely appreciated it. You'll see he is wearing the harness with the red iron cross on there, just like we've seen all the way back with the vintage action figure. However, they did go with the more brown and silver look, which is very much like what we saw in the 2000X version of He-Man there. I feel like it sits a little bit high up on his torso, but otherwise it's really nice. Now, it does not appear that this is removable. They definitely built the figure around this. It doesn't have parts where you can take it off or anything like that. You might be able to slide it off if we bend his arms around, but you can see it is a separate piece. I will say all of the parts are really nicely detailed. So you can see the wrist bracers there have this look almost like they're like leather wraps with like some metal plates on the top, which have some really nice kind of bronzing and everything going on there, which looks really great. And then one of the things I really want to talk about is his loincloth. Yes, we're going to focus on He-Man's loincloth because Mondo did something a little different here, and they gave him a leather loincloth instead of his furry underpants that He-Man typically has. This is a really interesting take, and actually I kind of like that. I've always been one that says I prefer the classic furry pants. It's weird talking about that, but I really dislike it when He-Man gets put in full pants. I feel like the barbarian furry loincloth makes sense for the character, but I will say that the leather one is kind of neat. This is actually made of like a faux leather material. It might actually be real leather, I'm not sure, but it's definitely at least a faux leather material. It's got some actual stitching on there, which is really cool. You can see that all the way around. It's actually double layered here, so check that out. It's pretty cool. And then it does have this cool belt going around the top, which is made of plastic. It is a separate piece, and it's not removable. I really noticed that it doesn't look like there's any way to take this off. But one thing, and this is, okay, I'm warning you guys, I'm gonna pull up his loincloth right now because I want to show you that underneath the leather, they actually sculpted his classic furry trunks. And if we look on the front, you'll see he even has his classic belt piece. I kind of wish this was removable because I want to see what the figure looks like with his classic furry loincloth and belt there. But it definitely looks like they put this on before assembling the torso. So I don't think there's a way to really take this off without some help from a customizer. Going down to the boots, I do really like what they did here because he's got actual fur at the top of the boots, and then the bottom piece there looks like it's got some leather straps and everything wrapped around it. This is all part of the sculpt. It's all plastic, but it's really cool. The details are beautiful on this. So overall, I think the paint deco is pretty nice. I do want to point out a few little areas where we've got some scratching. You can see on his forearm here, there's a little bit of a paint scuff going on there. And part of that is from these wrist bracers because these are separate pieces and they're flexible. And I'm gonna go and show you this now. He does come with interchangeable hands, which we're gonna come back to. But if you pop the hand off the joint there, the wrist bracers are instantly removable, and you'll see that they've left all of this paint scuff on the forearm. I don't know if that's really coming through there, but it's super noticeable. Now, it's not too big of a deal because the wrist bracer pretty much covers that all up, but it is worth noting that that seems to be scratching up the plastic or rubbing its paint off, and I've definitely got it up here on the higher part of the forearm as well. Same can be said underneath. You can see where his legs are meeting at the hips there. The articulation joint is leaving some paint rub from those furry trunks there. So a little bit of paint rub. The good news is that all of it seems to be covered up, you know, by the loincloth or by the wrist bracers. So it's not too bad. It is just worth noting that some of this brown does seem to be rubbing off on the skin tone. But other than that, I feel like it's really nice and clean looking. And I think the overall presentation is actually pretty good on this. Again, it's a personal preference on the head sculpt. I'm not sure I'm totally in love with it, but everything that's here still looks really nice. So why don't we go and talk about that articulation since I've been bringing it up. So that head is jointed on like a ball-like joint. Now the head's removable, so you can see we can pop that off, and we're gonna come back to that, but you can see it's got the little neck peg in there that's ball jointed, so it rolls all the way around. So And just pop the head back on there. You got nice ball-like joints at the shoulders, which do have kind of the ratchet joints. They're clicking, which is really nice and keeps them tight. So you can also go forwards and backwards. You got the swivels at the bicep there as well. The elbow joints are really interesting because it's like a normal elbow joint, but you can see they got this extra piece sculpted on that looks like his elbow, which is really cool. So it actually covers up that joint. This joint is super tight. See, so you really got to put a lot of work to flex and bend that there. It also swivels at the bottom of the elbow as well. So you got bicep swivel as well as an elbow swivel. Now you notice I popped the hand off pretty easy. This is something I've really noticed. The hands do seem to pop out of socket pretty easy on this guy. They hold fine, so you can see it's not too loose, but when I'm bending them around and posing them, I found that I was pulling the hands out of socket quite a bit. But you can see that those are also kind of ball jointed there, so the hands can roll all the way around, which is nice. The torso is also ball jointed there at the top of the torso, and then the waist as well can swivel, which is really nice. You can see he's got those ball sockets there. I don't know if you can see that, but he's got the ball sockets there at the thighs. So legs can go outwards. They can roll all the way around, forwards and backwards, which is really nice there. You do have really tight double joints at the knees. Check that out there. And again, those are real tight like the elbows, which is really cool. And then those also swivel. You can swivel at the top of the knee as well as the bottom of the knee. The boots themselves don't swivel. It's like the whole lower leg is where the swivel comes from. And then the ankles, you can see real good movement there. So they can go forwards and backwards, and they can rock side to side. And overall, I haven't had too much of an issue standing him up. Every now and then, the legs kind of feel a little loose in the ankles, but it's not too bad. For the most part, it seems pretty tight, and you can see that I can pose him around, and he seems to hold his stance pretty well. Now, I do want to go ahead and bring this in right now, since we're talking about standing. A figure stand is included if you feel like you need it. The bottom's kind of got like the Mondo logo. This is just one of those ones where like it's got the little hook here that basically rests under the crotch of the figure, so you can kind of pop that up there, and then if you want to, you can use this figure stand to hold him up. But it's worth noting, he seems to stand pretty well on his own, so you don't necessarily need that stand. All right, so lots of accessories here, and I mentioned the interchangeable hands, and that is because he comes with several different hands. So we've got these gripping hands here, which is going to be for holding onto like his swords and his shield. He also has fists, and he has more gripping hands that have trigger fingers, which is going to be for the blasters that he comes with. And it's very easy to change those out. I mean, they're on those little pegs that I showed you. So you can grab another hand, you can easily pop it in place. Like I said, these are the easiest things to remove on here. They actually pop out pretty easy. They're also a little soft and a little flexible. You can see that the fingers bend around and they move. They hold the weapons fine. I haven't had any issues with them being too loose, but it is worth noting that they're flexible. So they're a little softer. They're not like a hard, rigid plastic. So all those interchangeable hands. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the weapons. Let me go and put the gripping hand back on here, and let's first bring in the power sword. Now this is really cool. Of course, we've got He-Man's classic power sword, and what's neat is it also comes with the sheath. The sheath is really neat. I love kind of the designs I did here. Like, look at this. That is clearly Battle Cat's helmet at the bottom of the sheath, which is really, really neat. And it does kind of have that like leather wrapped look to it. There's like some sculpted fur. And then we got these little hooks on the back, and you can see that those hooks are posable. These are posable like that because they're meant to just kind of clasp onto the back of his harness. And now we've got his sword on his back. It seems like it sits a little high. I don't know, that could just be me. But it is pretty cool that we can house the sword on his back with that sheath if we want to. And then of course we can pull the power sword out. The power sword, just like the figure, is a unique design. Now it definitely resembles the classic power sword with the shape of it there. But they definitely took some liberties. You can see it gets a little wider there at the tip. It's like a mixture of silver and almost like this goldish, like really run down, almost bronzish look. I don't know. And then it's wrapped with leather. And then it's got this really interesting skull on the end of it there with like a little helmet with a spike on it. So it's definitely a very more realistic or more gritty take on the sword there with the skull. But you can see that he holds onto it just fine with the normal gripping hand. Like I said, the fingers flex a little bit, but look at that. He gets a nice grip on there. So very cool stuff with the power sword. And since we got the power sword, why don't we go ahead and bring in the shield? Same with this. I mean, it definitely is inspired by the classic shield, but you can see it's much darker. It gives it this more, you know, just overall barbaric look, which is definitely what they're going for here. This is a very serious tone He-Man that they've got going on there. So this is pretty cool. And the way this is designed is it actually has this softer strap that goes around his forearm, and then it's got the handle that his hand holds onto, and this part here is removable. So, in order to get him holding the shield, this is what I recommend doing. This actually works the best. If you take the handle off and put it in the figure's hand, and then take the shield and slide it over the forearm, and then replace the hand, and then plug the handle into the back of the shield like that, that is the best way to attach the shield. And look at this shield, man. This shield is massive. I like it. I actually think it looks really cool. So now we've got He-Man armed up with his shield and his sword. But hey, if you're a little more old school with your He-Man, maybe the power sword's not for you, well, good news, Mondo has you covered, because we've also got the classic battle axe. And again, it's a little more gritty, a little more realistic, kind of has that same like light gold and silver look, and it's very dirty, but that is very cool as well. So you can arm him up with the battle axe instead. And if you just want to give him another generic weapon, he also just comes with this other regular sword, which is cool because it totally looks like the little sword that came with the Castle Grayskull weapons rack. You know, that old weapons rack with the gray weapons from the original playset. That's totally what this sword looks like. And check that out. At least I'm pretty sure that's what it's trying to be. Either way, it's a neat inclusion. Nice little extra sword for him to do some sparring if you would rather have that. So we've got those 3 bladed weapons to really give him this barbaric look. But one of the things that Mondo is really doing with these is they are mixing in all sorts of elements from various Masters of the Universe properties. So not only do we get those swords or those bladed weapons, but we also get some futuristic looking blasters. Look at that. We've got a little blaster pistol and a blaster rifle, and these are no doubt inspired by the 87 motion picture, right? We saw him using the blasters in that film. That is definitely what these are inspired by. And that is why he comes with the trigger fingers. So if we want to pop in the trigger fingers there, we can do that, the other hand with the trigger fingers, and then look at that. Now we can display He-Man with the smaller little blaster pistol, or we can use the larger blaster rifle there, which he can also hold two-handed if you would rather do it. So I think that's pretty neat that they included those, and that way you've got all these different ways to display your He-Man figure. Okay, so I've shown you guys all of the weapons, all of the interchangeable hands. He's got one more interchangeable element that I've got to show you, and I talked about how I'm not entirely sure if I'm in love with this head or not. Well, he comes with an extra head, which is inspired by the vintage He-Man action figure. And when you look at this head sculpt alone, it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's a good sculpt, and you look at it and it's instantly recognizable as that vintage toy head, right? So immediately I was like, well, that's the head I'm gonna display him with. So we can pop the head off that joint that I showed you. We can easily pop the new head on, and this is what we've got now. So here's the deal. I think the idea of the vintage toy head is cool. I am not entirely sure I like the execution. And I think it has something to do with like the head on this body. Like this body feels taller and thinner. You know, the vintage He-Man action figures were stocky and chunky and they had the bent knees. So it almost looks like this body is too tall and thin for this head. And it looks weird, like he looks like he's got a toy head. And I don't know, like I have such weird mixed feelings on it. I keep going back and forth because while I was sitting here posing him around to take photos of him, I was like, you know what? Yeah, that actually looks really good. I think I like this. But then I'd get him in another angle and I'd go, no, that looks off. That looks really strange. So I don't know, like, again, I think the idea of this head is cool. I am just not entirely sure that it works with this body type. So I don't know. You guys can tell me what you think of it. So He-Man comes with a lot of stuff, but there's one more thing that he comes with, which is this little bonus character. This is Burby. He's from the Filmation He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon series. He was in one episode, one of those classic Filmation characters. You can see he comes on this clear stand, so he's flying in the air. You can pop him right off there if you want to. He's got the little propeller on the back that actually turns. He is an amazing sculpt. He looks just like the Filmation cartoon, and that's a little weird. I talked about this being like a hodgepodge of different eras of Masters of the Universe, right? Like, it's interesting because they went with a very serious, very barbaric look for the figure. They included some of the sci-fi elements with the blasters, but then we also have the very cartoony element like the original cartoon series. So there's a lot of things going on here. I love this. It just feels out of place with this. But I don't know, it's an extra packing thing. Obviously, I can't complain about it. I kind of wish we got characters like this in the smaller 7-inch Masters of the Universe Classics line with the Filmation figures. It would be great with those. But nonetheless, this is packed in and included with the figure. So hey, if you're a fan of Filmation, you've got a Burby. If you don't like Filmation, you can just move him over here. He doesn't have to stand next to He-Man on your shelf. All right, guys, it's comparison time. Just for fun, I'm gonna go ahead and stand this new Mondo He-Man alongside the vintage He-Man action figure and the Masters of the Universe Classics He-Man, because I really want to give you a sense of scale between all of these figures, and you can kind of see the differences in the designs as well. And how about a comparison time with that toy head? Yeah, there we go. There's the toy head alongside the original toy that it's based on. All right, so final thoughts here. I'll be perfectly honest and tell you that I was unsure how I was gonna feel about this. I think it's really cool that we were getting Masters of the Universe in the 1/6 high-end scale now, because I know there's a lot of fans of this particular scale, and they've always wanted to see He-Man figures done this way. I've never really been a big collector of these, so I didn't know if I needed these, and I wasn't totally sold. Like, I liked a lot of the ideas of what I was seeing, but I wasn't for sure if it was gonna be something that I particularly would love with my specific tastes. But I will say that having him in person, really playing around with him, I was impressed with all of the beautiful sculpting. The paint deco is really nice and clean on this guy. Like I said, he feels nice and solid, and the articulation's really good. It functions good. You can get him in a I have the power pose, you know, by the power of Grayskull, works pretty good. I even kind of stood him with like the bent knees and everything, trying to look like the vintage toy, and I kind of liked the way he looked like that. So I've had a lot of fun with this. I'm not entirely sure I love either of the heads still, but that's a personal preference. I think some of the other things Mondo's doing with some of the future figures like Skeletor and Merman specifically look really cool. Some of the interesting, unique takes, and you know what? I think there's a place for all of this in the world, because different toy lines having different styles, that's all good, man, because now there's something for everybody. So, if this looks like something that you want to pick up and add to your collection, it is worth noting that these are on the higher end. They're going to be a higher price point, retailing for $159.99. You should be able to order it at online stores. Make sure you check out this video's sponsor, Megalopolis Toys, with the link in the video description. You can already pre-order Skeletor and some of the future Mondo Masters of the Universe figures. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, leave me a comment to let me know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, my friends.